Welcome back to Nuno Solutions, guys. I'm Nuno, and in this video, I'm going to try to demystify polymorphism. This is a topic that's actually super confusing for beginner programmers, and believe it or not, I've noticed, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, even intermediate programmers get confused by this. So in this video, I'm going to try to show you what the purpose of it is, how to use it, when to use it, that kind of thing. So real quick, in my solution explorer in here, I created a .NET 6 console application, and you can see I have an employee class. This employee class has just two properties, first name and last name, both of them of type string. I have a programmer class. This inherits from employee so that you get the first and last name inherited. And I have an additional property that's a programming language string. I have another model called sysadmin. Sysadmin also inherits from employee. And the reason why is because programmer and sysadmins really are just employees at the end of the day. So if you're not familiar with inheritance, that's what inheritance is. Instead of re-adding the same properties to every single class that's similar, you could just inherit from a base object, and those properties that are in the base object automatically propagate to the child object. And then in your child object, you can add additional properties. So like when we go to employee, we have first name and last name only. But in sysadmin, we also have specialization. So when you create a sysadmin object, you could actually access first name, last name, and specialization. But if you create a programmer object, you cannot access specialization because the employee doesn't have it, because it only has first name and last name, and then the programmer doesn't have specialization. Programmer has programming language as a property. So those are the models. I have another class called employee controller. All this is for simplicity's sake, I created a class called employee controller, has one static method in here called get full name. It takes a parameter called employee of type employee, and it returns the first name and last name concatenated as a string. So I want to show you how you can create methods that you can use to return whatever you want to return for any object that basically inherits a base class. So basically, polymorphism at the end of the day is just the ability to use a class as another. And I'm going to demonstrate what I mean by that, because that might sound a little confusing at this point. So let me just create a few employee objects in here. So I'm creating an employee list, and I'm adding 3 employees, Nuno, Elon, and John. All of these employees are of type employee. The class that I'm constructing the object from is the employee class. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through these objects and console write line them to the console. And my goal here is I want to retrieve the full name of each employee and output the data type, or the object type rather, of the type of object that actually is, we're pulling the full name from. So if I run this, you'll see it actually writes out the full name for every single employee, and it tells you the type of object that it is. Now, let's say we had a list, but our list was not employees. Let's say we had a list of, for example, programmers. And so I'm actually going to comment this out, and I'm going to add a new list here of type programmers, and I'm actually adding programmer objects into this list. Now, in the employee controller, if you don't understand how to use polymorphism, you would think you'd have to create another method in here like this. You'd have to add a get full name, and you have to put programmer in here like that. So that way you just say get programmer full name, right? But you don't have to do that. This is the whole point of polymorphism. You don't need to do that. So you can still use this get full name, even though it expects an employee parameter. You can still use it for programmer because programmer inherits employee. So any class that inherits a base class, if that base class is used as a parameter in any method, you can pass that object into it. It doesn't matter that it has other properties. As long as you're not trying to access the child properties that don't exist in the base class in your method, you're good. Let me go back into the program class, and I'm actually going to change this a little bit. I'm actually going to pull from programmers. I'm going to change employee to programmer, and I'm actually going to call the employee controller that got full name of the programmer. And now if I put my mouse over here, you can see this is actually a programmer object. It's no longer an employee, but I don't get any squiggly lines, right? And we're passing the full name, and actually we want to get the type from the programmer object as well. So if I run this, should work, and it does. And you'll see the object type is actually programmer, it's not employee. But even though the employee controller expects an employee object, it still runs successfully because a programmer is a type of employee. It inherits employee as a base class. And you could do the same thing with sysadmins. Let's say our list was just a list of employees. Let me delete these, get this out of the way here. Let's add a few sysadmins in here as well. So I have to change this list object to employees. And I'm going to add in here a sysadmin, just one, just to demonstrate this. And if I do it like this, you're going to see a little squiggly line under programming language. That's because our sysadmin doesn't have a programming language property. It only has a specialization property. And I could just, if I wanted to delete this completely, or I could just add specialization in here and just, say, I don't know, Linux. It's kind of weird though. It's like, how can I add a programmer and a sysadmin into an employee list? Isn't that weird? Well, this is polymorphism. Since programmer and sysadmin both inherit from the employee base class, you can create an employee list and add programmers and sysadmins to it. Let's change our for each loop, and we're going to pull from the employees. And I'm just going to do var emps in employees. And I'm going to change, I'm sorry, I'm just going to change this to emp. We're going to pass in the emp. And we're also going to change the programmer.getType to emp.getType. And we're going to run this and see what happens and see if it runs successfully or not. And here's the cool part. Even though we're calling it employee controller.getFullName and we're passing in the current employee object, and even though the employee list technically has programmers and sysadmins in it, it's still able to call the getFullName method because both programmer and sysadmin inherit from employee. And as you can see here in the result, it outputs the full name for each programmer and sysadmin successfully without any problem whatsoever. And it even tells you the object type, which is the first three are programmers, the fourth one is a sysadmin. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. If you liked the video, please click the like button. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.